everybody. This is Aditi Nirvan. I am a transformational mentor, a therapist, an artist, and an entrepreneur. And welcome to the fifth episode of Webinars That Inspire with me. Today's topic is a really sensitive one, and I genuinely hope that all of you who are attending this online today will look at everything that I share with you quite deeply and reflect on it through the week till we come to the next one. And of course, as always, I would love feedback from you guys. Tell me what's working, tell me what's not working. If there are any topics that you would really love for me to dive into, I look forward to feedback from all of you. Let's make this as interactive as possible. And let me also share with you that Saturday mornings are my favorite time of the week when I really look forward to being with all of you. And I really love this. It's my passion to share with people, and that's apparently what I do well. So here we go. Today's topic has been promoted through the whole week. It's called It's Not Love, It's Abuse. And the reason why I have picked out this really sensitive topic, where we draw very distinct and clear lines between what constitutes as abuse and what constitutes as love. The reason for that is because it has pained me over the years to see so many people that I love and care about and have nurtured that keep giving into the abuse continuously and relentlessly, almost like they're compulsed by it, almost like they don't have a choice from it. And it becomes difficult when you're very close to someone to be able to shake them up and tell them, hey, what are you doing? Um, I don't know how many people there are out there who do the same thing or do something much worse than it. And I think it's part of that pain that I have for people that compels me to really talk about this topic today. So, one of the first things that I do want to share with all of you is that if you feel that it is love, um, please remember one thing, that love never ever seeks consciously or unconsciously to break down anyone's spirit. Even if all relationships in your life, they may be very loving, they're nice, they're whatever, but they may have its set of challenges, like every relationship does. But abuse is not a challenge. Abuse is a systematic disempowerment and an eventual destruction of the person. And it's eventual because it happens in bits and pieces over a period of time. It's almost like it's in tiny doses that you feel you can digest, but in the end, you do suffer from indigestion. This is not a relationship challenge. This is a mental, emotional, and a deeply spiritual crisis. This isn't love, this is abuse. We are going to dive into the different kinds of abuse first. So, the first part of the webinar really is about recognizing what abuse is. And the second part of the webinar is what you can do to heal yourself or try to come out of it. Please understand that we have the limitation of an hour or so, not too much, where we are going to be discussing all these aspects. Now, it's going to be a little tough for me to dive into individual people's experiences because this topic is so wide and so deep and so many different varieties of it, that it's not going to be possible for me to cover all of it in an hour. We're going to do as much as we can. So here you go. So the different kinds of abuse. So the first one that we have is known as the mental abuse. Mental abuse can be verbal, it can be non-verbal, and it can be just simply action. Like, for example, the act of maybe not responding to you when you ask a question and you're being ignored constantly. So it's an act of non-action or non-response. There's no words in it. So this can involve things like that. It can involve holding back affection. It can involve holding back communication. It can involve holding back on a response. Mental abuse also constitutes as being vengeful towards somebody. You may do this very unconsciously. Now, please remember that throughout this entire webinar, I am not going to be trying to portray you, the listener, as the one present here as the victim and somebody else as the perpetrator of the abuse. Abuse is something that we all do. Yeah, there are absolutely no exceptions, that we all have been abusive in some way, shape, or form or the other since the day that we were very small. We've probably pinched and kicked other kids when we were very small. That's physical abuse. And as we grew older, we learned what abuse was, maybe through parents or family members or friends or whoever it is. And we perpetrated that abuse onto others. So this isn't a webinar exclusively to say that, oh, you poor dear victim, and that you are the victim of somebody else's abuse. Please understand that every person who is a victim and every person who is the abuser, both are victims. They both are people who have chosen to take one particular side to reflect how much they have been abused in their past. So this, everything that I share with you today, please understand, become aware of it for yourself and become aware of it whether somebody else is for you or to you. So let's come back to mental abuse and forms of mental abuse. Okay, so it can also involve something like mind games. Gaslighting is a huge one. Gaslighting is, honestly, it's like a 2-hour webinar topic by itself, but I will try to skim through what it actually means. So say, for example, you're living with somebody who says and does things to you. And then over a period of time, when you try to bring up that thing with them, they vehemently deny it. They say that, no, I never said this. There's something wrong with you. You've imagined it. Or they say that, oh, yes, I did this. Why can't you remember? You don't seem to remember things. And what happens is that over a period of time, when someone keeps breaking your trust in what they said or what they did, you start to not just doubt them, you start to doubt yourself. You start to not be able to trust who you are. You can't trust your own memory, you can't trust your own feelings, and that demolishes your spirit over a period of time. And this is one of the very, very severe forms of mental abuse, and it is known as gaslighting. Gaslighting happens also very extensively in places where there are huge religious groups. There can be spiritual places that have this. Um, cults are a major example of gaslighting, which happens between the people. It happens between the person who teaches and to the people. But we'll get more into that a bit later on. Coming back to what are the ways in which mental abuse occurs, you get confused whether to trust somebody or not. That's a major sign of being mentally abused, because if please know that at some level there has been some kind of a mental abuse that has happened. It may be very, very subtle. I'm not saying that it has to be always very gross and in your face and huge and traumatizing, but it can be very subtle. The idea here is to just simply recognize it and call it for what it is. But eventually, what happens around mental abuse is that you find that you probably need to sort of walk on eggshells around the person. You need to tiptoe around the person. You can't be comfortable. You can't be yourself. You have to try to kind of shrink yourself to become this other person that you think they want you to be. All of that is abuse. If you can't have freedom in your own relationships and you can't have comfort to be yourself in your own relationships, that itself is a form of abuse. You will find yourself constantly obsessing and wondering whether are you being wrong, are you being right, what would you say or what would you do next that would trigger something off with the other person. All of this is mental abuse. Let's move to emotional abuse, which kind of overlaps a bit with emotional abuse. Both are pretty, I would say, pretty close with a few distinctions. Emotional abuse can constitute as silent treatment, someone trying to punish you by not responding to you, not saying a word to you. It could be in person or it could be over the phone, which is very typical nowadays. It's also signs of jealousy or acts of jealousy. It can also be public or private shaming. Now, this can happen also in the workplace. This needn't always be in relationships alone. In the workplace, it can show up like, for example, your superior pulling you up in front of your colleagues. That can be public shaming, and that is emotional abuse. Nothing stops them from taking you aside privately and telling you the feedback that they have for you. That's totally fine. It can also be constant criticism, being ridiculed or being criticized all the time. It's almost like the person isn't actually happy with you, and you keep wondering why are they with you if they don't really like anything you do or say. It can also be sabotaging. This is self-sabotage, and this is sabotaging other people, both. Outbursts of anger, where uh, someone is yelling or screaming at you, or probably even throwing things at you, and you kind of go into a freeze mode and you're unable to respond. You can feel your throat chakra and your mouth kind of jammed up because no words seem to come out when that kind of massive explosive energy is there. And you can even have traumatic symptoms later on. But again, it depends. It's very relative from person to person. uh, there's a lot of huge energy around this topic, and I'm sorry if I'm going to be a little intense today, because this is a topic that's extremely dear to me. Having been through various forms of abuse throughout my whole life, I've come to a point where, although I'm at peace with it, but I do feel it very, very intensely for other people. So forgive me for being intense today. But with that, let's go on. Emotional abuse can also constitute as, someone being narcissistic with you. Narcissistic is a person who is all about I, me, myself, and there is no we, there's no we, there's no you and I together. There is only me and you. So a person who has that kind of a syndrome, you will find yourself being excluded from their universe all the time. Um, Emotional abuse can also be humiliation, publicly or privately, being completely dominated, being controlled, being shamed for things that you may consider are very unique about you or great about you, or are your strengths, and you could be ridiculed or shamed for that. Can you even begin to imagine what that does to a person? Even telling somebody that they're worthless or useless. And oh, this one resonates a huge one with me, because I remember in my childhood, I was never ever good enough for my family. The interesting thing is, in my entire family, I'm one of the very few people who didn't go to IIT and didn't become a doctor or didn't become an engineer or a scientist. My sister is a scientist today, a highly accomplished one, but I'm here doing this. Now they are beginning to recognize that what I do seems to be more valuable. So, but that's on my journey, that's their journey. And being told that I'm worthless or useless actually got me to a point where it made me seek out a whole lot of knowledge and learning. um, we'll deal with how to turn a situation around for yourself later on, but please don't think that I have not, I'm coming from a place as, oh, being a therapist or being a mentor or being a facilitator, and therefore I know more than you about this. I have studied it, I have practiced it extensively, but more than anything else, I have lived through it. I have lived through each one of these abusive states. And a lot of what I share today is a mixture of both experience, wisdom, and my learning. Yep. And let's go to the next one with that. Physical abuse, I think, is a mighty clear one. It is any physical harm done to your body or your private space. And I'd say that this involves sexual abuse as well. Groping, sexual abuse, kissing you, hugging you when you don't really want it. Uh, yes, it feels physically gross, but it does have the same effect on you mentally and emotionally that the other mental and emotional forms of abuse do. It scars you somewhere at some level and for quite some time. This is again a topic like narcissism and gaslighting, which could probably have a 2-hour webinar on its own. So let's not go much deeper into it. This is just for your knowledge to recognize that this is a form of abuse. The next one is a very, very big one, and a lot of people are not even aware that this one exists. This is spiritual abuse. What is spiritual abuse? Spiritual abuse is one of the very, very scary ones and possibly one of the most damaging ones. I would say probably even more damaging than a physical abuse, simply because you go and put your trust and faith in somebody to take care of you spiritually, and you are abused as a cause of it. This happens extensively in India amongst a lot of religious cults and spiritual cults, which we referred to earlier. Let's take a look at what actually constitutes to spiritual abuse. So there is a bit of a list in this one. So please pay attention, and if you need to take notes, please take notes. If you have a self-proclaimed spiritual teacher or a guru, or one that claims to be more religious and can help you, and you go to them with this space that there's something wrong with me, I need to be fixed, please take care of me, I put myself in your hands, you can take me to where you think is appropriate for me to be, which is either more conscious or a more enlightened space to be, or closer to God or closer to spirit, whatever it is, that promise that is, what happens is that with spiritual abuse, the leader or the teacher or the guru tend to be very totalitarian or authoritative in the way they are, meaning what I say goes. They would even possibly take a step forward in dissing or pulling down other teachers or gurus who are considered at par with them. That's one of the very, very classic signs that there's possibly spiritual abuse happening over here. And I know that this particular section might offend a lot of people who are listening today, but I honestly, I don't really care, simply because I feel this information really needs to be out there. um, the other one is that criticism in their presence of them or what they teach, or where you possibly bring someone else's teaching into that space, is never entertained. There's no open mindedness about it. Inadvertently, in a twisted, manipulated way, the others are always put down. You have to then jump or go through various levels or hoops in that sense, to feel worthy to be in their presence or to be in their inner circle, which is a very, very classic sign that you've probably been spiritually abused by the time you actually get there or get accepted into that inner circle. You'll also find that you end up paying very dearly for being in their presence in terms of services. You will end up doing things for them that you probably wouldn't do for anybody else. You'll end up committing money to them, and a whole lot of money to them, that you don't even know how it went, or you will give up your possessions. It isn't unusual for people in cults and these kind of religious sections to even give up on their family and family life and walk away from them, because the family has been painted as negative to them. You will find yourself isolated from the world you came in. You feel you don't belong to the rest of the world outside, and this group is the only group that is very sacred to you, and it's the best to you, and it gives you everything you want. That's a huge red flag. Okay, wake up, guys. If you're in that space, please, please wake up. um, you give up being sound, you give up being reasonable, you give up being logical, and you definitely give up being sane. um, yes, you may even change your language, you may change your internal dialogue, change the way you suddenly think, you become pious, you become sacred, you become all of those things. But please remember, one of the biggest ego trips in the world is the spiritual ego, and where you have a sense that, oh, I am so spiritual, I am so sacred, nothing can touch me. I'm sorry, guys, that's a big one. I strutted around walking with that one for a long time, and it still shows up in parts, and I still struggle with it. I am human too, just like you. But if you have that, that's a red flag, guys. Put a pin in that one and take a look at it immediately, because it can be the destruction of you, and not in a good way. Okay. So this is spiritual abuse, and one thing I do want to tell about spiritual abuse is that anything religious, anything spiritual, anything consciousness related is free. You do not need anybody to handhold you. Now, that doesn't mean you don't go to gurus or teachers. Of course, you do. You read about them, you attend their seminars, you do all of that. But never ever do it from a point of losing your sense of self. where you are overridden by what the other says and you're completely taken in by them, that you're kind of hypnotized by them and you start seeing your life getting destroyed in these ways. Not a good thing, because, and they might even sometimes tell you that, oh, is your life destroyed? Awesome. That means you're getting more conscious. I'm sorry, that doesn't work. That's a load of crap. You should be able to thrive. You should be able to do better. You should be able to support hundreds of other people walking the same path as you. And that is real spirituality. There's a sense of groundedness about it, and not this thing that they package and tell you and sell to you, where if you don't attend this or you don't do that, you have a sense of fear of missing out. That's FOMO. So that's another red flag that you must watch out for. And with that, we will wrap up spiritual abuse. Financial abuse is the next one. It's a big one. Again, another one where we don't realize that we actually do this, is where you are controlled by money or you're threatened by the lack of money. You are probably even incentivized with financial gains if you undertake certain uncomfortable tasks or behaviors. Uh, you'll eventually find that your finances are not in your hands and they're being taken care of by somebody else. And of course, not unless that the person is your chartered accountant, that's a whole different deal. But this is a so-called loved one or a person you trust and care about. And you find that later on, you have to do all their bidding, because the money is locked in with them. You could also be told that, hey, you're taken care of, which starts to eventually become a burden, and you find yourself in a sort of a golden cage. Your money or your credit cards are being used by family members or relatives or friends or whoever it is that you trust. And your connection with them, your relationship with them exists simply because they need money from you. And you'll probably be emotionally and mentally manipulated in order to remain in that relationship, because they don't want to cut off their source of income from you. This again is financial abuse. Financial abuse also extends to things like, manipulation of benefits that you get from the government, getting a loan from someone with severely damaging conditions attached, being asked to account for every single penny. If somebody gives you money on a monthly basis and asks you to account for every single penny and makes you cry over it, that is financial abuse. That's financial abuse of a very, very, I don't have the words for it. Okay, it really destroys a person when that happens. Of course, then there is stealing money from you, which is also financial abuse. So these are the forms of financial abuse. And now we come to the last two. The second last one is energetic abuse. So energetic abuse is where your time, your space, and your energy are being hijacked by others. So in the last webinar, we discussed about creating boundaries with people. When you don't create boundaries with people, this is what tends to happen. People will cross what should have been your boundary, and you get coerced and you get manipulated into giving up your time, your space, and your energy to other people. There are those people that you meet that when you spend a little bit of time with them, you find yourself emotionally and energetically completely drained and exhausted. You're just like, oh my God, that really sucked the the life out of me. And you probably need to take a nap or just be with yourself to energize for a while. Now, these people are known typically as energy vampires simply because what they thrive on is your energy. They want to suck the life out of you, they want to suck the energy out of you. And please don't blame them. This is not judgment. Understand that. We are just recognizing and we are becoming aware of how people function. So, here, instead of looking at this person and going, oh my God, this one's an energy vampire, that's not what this is about. This is recognizing that, okay, this person is not someone that I want to be around, because I get a very unpleasant feeling when I'm with them. I feel very drained when I'm around them. So let me draw boundaries or let me not meet them. And that's the idea of where I'd like you to get to with the discussion today. Okay, the last and the most important one is addiction. Now, how is addiction abuse? It falls under the purview of abuse simply because it's all of it. It's physical abuse because you're taking drugs or you're taking too much food or you're taking too much alcohol or smoking nicotine. So in ways that you are damaging your physical body, and that constitutes as abuse. It's emotional and mental abuse because you have no clarity in your mind. Your emotions are completely suppressed and buried under, due to which the addiction also arises. It is energetic abuse simply because, well, do you have energy to do other things or to even create the life that you want? You're completely swayed in and you're governed and possessed and obsessed by this addiction. It's financial abuse because a lot of your money gets wasted in this. It's as simple as that. And it is spiritual abuse simply because it's a crisis of the soul addiction. Now, we're not going to dive again into too deep into this topic, except that it's extremely toxic. And understand that abuse doesn't just constitute, gutkha and eating tobacco, or smoking tobacco, or alcohol, and any one of those things. It's not just those things. It's also extensively even food, food habits. Um, Examples. So yo-yo dieting. Okay, I know a lot of men and a lot of women both, who get on a diet and off a diet, on a diet, off a diet, on a diet, off a diet, and that goes on for 20, 30 years. Okay, and their weight doesn't really change that much. That is a form of addiction. Yes. Chronic eating is a form of addiction. Overeating is a form of addiction. Undereating is a form of addiction, and a whole lot of other self-abusive things that people do with food. And I tell you this simply because I am an eating psychologist. I have studied the relationship between emotions and eating and food and body and mind. It's a mess. Okay, none of us seem to have got it right till now. We don't seem to have found it in balance, and we tend to abuse ourselves. Another major abuse is shopping, addiction to shopping, where you can't do without it. When you're happy, you want to celebrate and you want to shop. When you're sad, in order to give yourself an uplift, you want to go and shop. And it is compulsive in a cycle, which means at any given point you're shopping. That's not that's not sane. Again, that is addictive behavior, which is abuse. And if you are a shopaholic, there's a very cute film I'd recommend you watch called Confessions of a Shopaholic. It's a really, really nice film. It's a very typical chick flick, but it's a really nice one. It'll give you some good insights. So now that we've recognized the kinds of abuse, and we all know which ones we resonate with the most, the next step is to begin abuse recovery and healing. And this is the part that most people find the toughest. So if you've grown up about abuse and around abuse since you were a child, you will mistake abuse for love. You will feel that this is the way someone loves me. If someone hits me, oh, they're doing it because there's something wrong with me. I need to be set right. Therefore, I am slapped around. And only when I'm slapped around will I learn. That's abuse. That's not love. All right. Since you've not probably experienced what real love is like, you will unconsciously, therefore, seek an abusive relationship in your adult life. Because why? It feels familiar and it's the one that you're comfortable with. Okay. In fact, many of the people who grow around abusive families block out people who are genuinely loving and caring towards them, because that kind of real love feels very alien, very strange. They don't know what to do with it. It feels too intense for them. Okay. It can even scare them sometimes. And they are like, no, I'd rather be alone than be in that kind of a relationship. That person is just all over me all the time. Yes, it's out of experience. Okay, I have lived that kind of a relationship in the past. If you know someone or a friend who has a series of abusive relationships, just watch the way they reject the ones that are actually the most loving towards them. You'll understand what I'm talking about, or you've probably faced it for yourself. A lot of people who face abuse walk around feeling deeply rooted sense of shame about who they are, and there's a lot of guilt about what they've done. There's a lot of hopelessness, there's fear, and there is definitely a lot of confusion in what they want out of their life. All of this can result in a sort of a um, psychophysiological symptoms in the body. For example, a lot of aches and pains that are unexplained, or it can cause a lot of insomnia, social withdrawal from people, not wanting to connect with others. It's different from introversion. Um, the inability to create loving and nurturing and healthy relationships. That's a huge sign that there has been abuse in your life. The abused often deals with deep feelings of worthlessness as they grow older. It's really as simple as that. They're not able to sometimes even label what they feel. They're not able to manage what they feel. They don't trust others. They don't trust themselves. They can tend to have eating disorders, like I've said. Sleep disorders are also pretty common. So, a lot of self-sabotaging behavior. You will want to become successful, but you will ensure that you're not going to be. You will constantly feel like a failure because there is a sense of worthlessness. That worthlessness feeling has to be fed and it has to be kept alive. Therefore, that's what you go out and do. And there is an urgent need to heal. Now, the healing is not going to be an overnight process. Please understand that. You've probably spent years and years getting abused. So trying to heal from it overnight is a very, very unrealistic expectation. It is a process, and you're going to have to change the way you think about it, and you're going to have to change your inner dialogue about it. It's going to take courage and a conscious commitment to yourself. So let's look at 9 different steps that you're going to take in order to heal. And these are simply pointers. See what feels for you, feels right for you, feels sane for you, what works for you. You can reject what doesn't work for you, because eventually this is not about pushing something down your throat. We're simply exploring what these things are and choose what works always. So the first one, please remember that the one who hurts you is never going to be the one that heals you. So, your first step is you have to detach yourself from the abuser, to emotionally, mentally, physically separate yourself and start making decisions and choices that are solely your own, never taking into account what the other will feel because of it, or what will happen if you leave, or what will happen if you say this. It's not your journey anymore. It's not your problem anymore. You needn't share everything and anything with them. This is the boldest and the most courageous step that one can take, and it is to leave, or have them leave. It depends on your situation, whether you're married, or whether it's a friend, or whoever it is. Okay, so this is a big one. Simply because a lot of people will not want to do this. Why? Because they will feel that they will upset the apple cart, they will upset the family life, but you don't know what is out there unless you take the step. Um, Abuse feels so comfortable that you don't want to leave your nest. But the opposite of it is freedom and space and the opportunity for you to be yourself. And you're never going to experience that as long as you stay with the one who hurts you. So please understand that here is an opportunity for you to set out on your own journey and begin your healing process without the other person. The second point, learn to trust what you feel and what you know. This is a huge one. Pay attention to all the doubts that you're having there inside with regards to the other one in your life. Those softest little voices that we all have, that has been making us aware of the situation for quite some time. Start to listen to it, start to trust it. You may even have dreamt of a life beyond this person who is abusive to you, but unless you take that step to move in that direction, you're not going to have that freedom that you kind of get a taste of sometimes. Do not feel shame in reaching out to professional help. Do not feel shame, and do not disregard or belittle or dismiss what you feel emotionally. Please own it, please acknowledge it. Nobody in the world has the right to judge you for what you feel, okay, or what you experience, and never let anybody tell you that. No parent, no child, no partner, no teacher, no guru, nobody should have the right to tell you what you feel and what you experience. That's yours. Own it. Point number 3. Just having some water. Okay. Point number 3 is there is a huge tendency for people in abusive relationships, especially the recipient of the abuse, to take the blame, to feel they are responsible for the abuse happening, that I must have said or done something to trigger the other person. There's something wrong with me. That's why they keep getting so angry. They keep getting so pissed at me. They're so aggressive, whatever it is that they do. Guys, I cannot reiterate this enough. There is nothing wrong with you. There is something wrong in the way that they are behaving. There's nothing wrong with them either. They've probably been abused too. But we're not looking at that right now. We're looking at you who has been abused. They cannot function without you, meaning that If you aren't there as a trigger, that abuse from their end isn't happening. Okay. So it's a very toxic kind of a relationship. Here you are not to blame, but you can take responsibility for staying in it for such a long time, and there's a difference in that. Blaming means something is wrong with me. Taking responsibility means I always have a choice. I can leave now. I've chosen to stay here till now. I can leave now, and doing it in the kindest possible way to yourself. The abuser is probably the way they are, like I said, because they've also been abused all their life. And it takes a great deal of courage to recognize the abuser within yourself. So, if you have been abused, it's not a time to do that right now. You can do that at a much later stage, because the last thing you want, when you're already feeling like you're to blame, is to have a lot more proof that you are to blame. So let's not go down that road. So don't take the blame, but take the responsibility. Okay. Point number 4, make your mental, emotional, and physical health an absolute priority. I'll tell you why. Take long walks, pick up a sport, do some yoga, do some strength training. Why is all of this important? Because it flushes your brain and your body with the best of hormones, which are endorphin, serotonin, dopamine, all of those hormones that give you happiness, gives you a sense of purpose, a sense of well-being. It gives you motivation, and it gives you a tremendous amount of attention and awareness. Plus, why would you not want to exercise? There are tremendous health benefits for exercise. Okay. And don't give me the excuse of lockdown. Okay. There's a lot out there that you can do. Um, with abuse, exercise is critical simply because it gives you that sense of self. What happens is when you go out there or you're at home or wherever it is that you're doing exercise, you create your own space. You start to understand that this is an act that you're taking to do something for yourself. So that muscle starts to build that, hey, I can do something for myself. I am doing this one particular thing for my own well being. And that over a period of time, that muscle starts to build, and you start using that to do many more things for yourself. It's just one thing that you start with, and that's it. It can really be that simple. So pick up any breath work to manage your emotions. Um, it's very important to have catharsis at this point of time, and breath work can tremendously help with that. Obviously, we can't all, go to the rooftop and start screaming to let out our, litany of emotions and this bucket of emotions that we carry within us. That's not possible. So any kind of breath work really helps in dealing with emotions. So pick up pranayama, which is a part of yoga. You can pick up qigong, or learn something like EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. It can help you a big deal. In my own personal journey, when I had to finally come to getting rid, in that sense, of all the abuse I had faced, uh, for me, what really worked was about 3 years of Qigong and Tai Chi, which really brought me to my centeredness. And then, of course, I picked up a sport, which is tennis and badminton, and then strength training. And that really, really helped getting my emotions and my mind in order. It gives you so much strength. And until you go through it, you won't understand it. Last but not the least, in this particular point, I would also say that if the trauma and the abuse has been severe, I would recommend getting professional help and seeking out therapies such as EMDR, which is eye movement and desensitization, because that actually restructures the trauma within your system. I personally don't do it, but there are psychotherapists and psychologists who do it. So I would genuinely recommend getting that done in order to realign how you think. Point number 5, in the healing process, you have every right to be loved and nurtured. Yes, you do. Like every other living being, you have a right to be loved and nurtured. And when you grow up in an abusive environment, all of your headspace, your heart space, your time, your energy, your inner dialogue, all revolves around battling the abuse. What has happened so far in your life? What will happen next? You're constantly living in fear, anxiety, and panic, and you're constantly on the edge. That's not a way to live. Okay, you need to remove yourself from that environment and go seek out relationships that are more caring, more nurturing, So you need to learn the process and how to do that for yourself too. You would rather use all of your headspace, heart space, energy, inner dialogue, all of that in being at peace, in evolving, in growing, in learning, and having freedom. Why? Because like every other living being, you deserve it. Number six, your choice to leave your abuser need never be justified. You don't need to explain why you're leaving or why you've left. It is nobody else's business but yours. Just let people know that this is what you're doing and that this isn't working for you, and leave. It's really as simple as that. It will give you a sense of deep power within you, which you've probably never felt before. Okay. Number seven, forgiving of the abuser is not mandatory, but forgiving yourself is. This is a very important point. Trying to forgive the abuser is not going to work, okay? At least not in the early stages of the healing process. You will find that you will start to make all the right choices over a period of time. Then you will learn to start to trust yourself, you will nurture yourself, you will love yourself, and then forgiveness will come as a result of it. It's not something that you're going to be actively doing. So forgiving yourself is critical. Okay. Then forgiving the environment, forgiving your choices that you've made till now, and then finally forgiving the abuser will happen over a period of time. And that happens only when your inner dialogue with yourself starts to shift. Point number eight. Okay. The second last one. Remember, there is nothing wrong with you. Okay. We've already reiterated this, but I'm going to put this across again. Facing abuse is not normal. Okay, it's not normal. Please do not normalize this. Do not go about saying, oh, that's okay, this person, they really love me, it's okay if he slapped me or she slapped me or pinched me or no. It doesn't work. Okay, it please don't try to normalize it, and please don't make excuses for the person. If you didn't like it, please sit across them and tell them, hey, I really love you, I want this relationship to work, but if this is how it's going to go, I really don't see myself being in it for a very long time. This kind of behavior doesn't work for me. I've had it all my life, and I had promised myself I will never ever be in this kind of an environment again. It is detrimental to my growth. It is detrimental to my purpose of being here for others. So let's not make this difficult. Let's not abuse each other, and lay that as a foundation for your relationship. Okay. The last point, that abuse, I know it sounds really ridiculous, but please understand where I'm coming from. That abuse, being abused, can actually be a deeply spiritual experience if you choose to completely come out of this. Once you choose to leave the abusive relationship, introspect about your choices, enjoy the newly gifted space and freedom that you've got, this can become a deeply spiritual experience. Your story and your growth, your evolution, and moving beyond all of the abuse that you've faced can become your own story, and you can share it with other people as a guide, as an inspiration, and to let other people know that, hey, there is a way out. And that's all, you know, I mean, if we weren't put here on earth to help each other and support each other and carry each other home, I don't really get the point of being here. This is so much fun, that you have these challenges and you move through it. I don't mean fun in the sense that you're getting abused is fun, but the fun part is when you come out of it and you learn that it can actually be a huge gift for other people. And I would love for you to come to this point. In my own life story, I'll share a few lines on that before I end the topic. I have faced an incident of sexual abuse when I was 12 or 13 years old. I have been physically abused at home for about a decade. Um, I have been emotionally abused in two earlier relationships. I've been spiritually abused by someone that I considered a guru and a mentor for about, I think, 9 years. I've been an alcohol addict for 2 years, and of course, I smoked for about 3 years. And I financially ruined myself 3 times over when I was in my 20s. So, with all of that behind me, with all of that abuse behind me, um, I have taken a very conscious step to recognize this monster for what it is, and to know that if this monster exists in my life, I am the only one that's been inviting it in. Why? Simply because I didn't lay the boundaries for it. I didn't say stop to it when I recognized it. It's like standing in the middle of a highway and expecting not a truck to hit you. There is a very great chance of being hit by a truck if you're going to put yourself in the highway. And I moved myself from it because I didn't want any more damage here. I wanted to live a life which is far sweeter, far simpler, far more peaceful. I did it for me and I did it for my son. And I stopped the cycle of abuse with me. My first tendency in getting angry would have been to whack him. I have never laid a hand on him till now, and he's almost 11 years old. And I have stopped the cycle of abuse. And I know that that is possible with every other person in the world. And I genuinely hope that what I've shared today is of even 1% help to all of you. My work is done then today. Um, yeah, I mean, that's really about what I had to share today. So I have a lot of questions that are coming in. Okay. Oh, there's quite a few of you. Okay. I just saw that. All right. So here we go for the questions. So Arpita from Kolkata is asking, is it worth to stay in an abusive marriage? No. I'm not even letting you complete the question. No, it's not worth it. Where the husband doesn't need any excuse to degrade the wife, even in front of a 3-year-old daughter, for the sake of the child. Uh, uh, okay. I'm sorry, this question makes me a little, it's emotional. Um, Arpita, honey, uh, no marriage. No marriage is worth any kind of abuse. Your 3-year-old daughter is watching and learning uh, how her father is being with her mother, and that is love. She is learning right now that for a man to be this way with a woman is called love. That is her definition of love. Age 3 you might think is very small, but trust me, their conscious mind hasn't completely formed as yet. Her subconscious is wide open right now, and it's all going right in there. Between the ages of 2 and 4, children are most susceptible to their environment. They soak everything up like a sponge. You may tell her growing up later on that, hey, you know what? Don't be with a man who speaks with you like this. But she's going to say, Ma, but you allowed Papa to be that way with you. What are you going to say then? So if you are thinking of what is best for your child, being in an abusive marriage is not the best for your child. We all come from this point of view where we think that being together with this person is an excuse for everything else to be, shoved under the carpet. No, it isn't. Being together isn't everything. Being separate sometimes actually works better for the child, because they learn then that if something is abusive, walk away. And that's ideally what you want to teach her. You want to teach her as a woman when she grows up to have her own individuality, to have her own courage, to be feminine, no doubt about it. But there is so much strength in being feminine. There is so much strength in saying no to something that is absolutely abusive. So please, Arpita, I genuinely hope you take the right call. I'm not going to ask you what to do or tell you what to do. I leave it to you. I would have suggestions, yes, but I would prefer to discuss that with you on a private platform, not over here today. Manjeet from Mumbai has sent in a question. Sometimes one knows what is okay. Sometimes one knows that what is happening is abuse, and yet one is unable to say or do anything because it's like a pattern that has been set in the past. How does one break free of such patterns in an abusive relationship? Okay, Manjeet, the unable to do or say anything part of your question is because you think that you probably think that you need the person or you need the relationship. And at times we are willing to be even abused or traumatized in order to not be alone or to not feel abandoned or not feel rejected. But please, I mean, I have said this in a webinar before. Um, Anything is better than being abused. Being alone is the best. I mean, I have spoken to you before. I'm aware of where your question comes from. My point is, if you're leaving the relationship anyway, how does it matter? Just leave. and I know you're at that point, just leave. There will be more than enough time for you to heal this. Okay. The second question from Manjeet is, at times the abuse is very subtle. It always is subtle. That's the most common one. Others may not even be able to see it as abuse, and yet it is abuse. How does one deal with that? I've given you 9 pointers earlier how to deal with it. I would say that just go with it. If you really want to speak it up, just simply say it. It's like, hey, this thing you did or this thing you said, it's very corrosive to me. It hurts. It's abusive to me. I don't like being treated that way. And please, I want you to know that you may think you love me, but if you don't respect me, then no amount of love in the world is going to work for me. I think respect needs to come way above love. Respect and trust and faith are qualities that you should have way above love in a relationship. Because if those are violated, there is no love left. There is nothing left then. So I would ask you to exercise that. Malini from Delhi, how to let go of abuse? Well, uh, you can't let it go directly. It's tricky. Your focus has to be, I'm sorry, my Siri just said something. You can't let go of abuse directly. It's tricky. Your focus has to be on strengthening your sense of self, valuing you, nurturing you, caring for yourself, loving yourself. And when you do this continuously over a period of time, what tends to happen is it starts getting grounded in you. It starts becoming who you are as a person. And even if you need to do this with professional help, there's no shame in it. Just go and do it. You do what you need to do in order for you to feel good about who you are, and eventually you will not even remember the abuse. Yeah, and that's how you let it go. Gauri from Delhi is asking, how do you stop self-abuse? How do you stop anything, Gauri Dhiman? We've had discussions about this, okay? It's pretty much the same way that I explained to Malini just now. It's the exact same way. Sarah from Canada has a very interesting question. What if you are the one who is doing the abuse, you are aware of it, but not sure how to change it? Sarah, thank you so much for this question. The fact that you even asked this question shows a great sense of self awareness from your part. And almost all people who abuse others have been abused themselves. So, all the 9 pointers that I have given earlier, please start to do those with yourself. If you are the person who is abusive, remove yourself from the relationship in order to start the healing process first. Here again, if you require professional help, please do so. In Canada, there is a lot less stigma around seeking professional help and therapy compared to what it is here in India and the other parts of Asia. So it's much easier access to you. Um, when abusive starts to become less compulsive of a nature for you, that's when you know you start having choice. And that's when you know that you can probably stop generational, multi-generational cycles of abuse with you. The buck is going to stop with you then. But you've already taken the first step by even asking this question. So great going, Sarah. Okay, Shalini from Hyderabad, can you talk about the difference between control and abuse? Is control abuse too? Hmm. Yes, control is abuse, especially when it is done in a way that it diminishes the other, and the other feels it. The other feels that they're being controlled and that they don't seem to have freedom or a choice to express themselves. Control by itself isn't necessarily a bad thing, meaning, uh, you need to control your car when you're driving, which is a good thing, or you're commandeering an army, which you need to do, or you're flying a plane, for which control is absolutely necessary. It serves a great purpose and it probably saves lives. But when control is done from a point of view of diminishing the other, that is abuse for sure. Garima from Dehradun has asked, in a relationship, if the partner constantly ignores the calls and messages, giving the reason that he is at work, is that defined as emotional abuse? Also, how does one actually differentiate that what's happening is emotional abuse? Sometimes we just know. Okay, so Garima, the second part of your question was answered earlier, but I will get into this. So first of all, I would ask you, what is your understanding with this person? Have they made it clear to you that they do not wish to be disturbed at work? Or have you asked them that if you don't want to be disturbed at work, how do I call you in terms of emergency? How would you like me to get in touch with you then? Would you want me to leave a text and that when you see the text, you'll get back to me, whether it's 4 or 5 hours later? How is it? Okay, so you know the person better. And if you've not had this conversation with the person, I would urge you to do so. Because then these kind of little surprises will pop up. And at this point, I don't know enough to know whether it's actually emotional abuse. But if the person has been earlier okay with you messaging and calling, and now suddenly they're not, then there is something else going on. Then I would ask you to have a conversation. You know, the funny thing is, I often find most people are not willing to have a conversation because they're almost afraid to hear something. Um, that means that you are probably needing it a lot more than you thought. So I would ask you to take a look at that. Do you need this relationship? And if you're very needy of it, then you probably want to let go of it a little bit in terms of neediness, and move from needing it to wanting it. Wanting is a much lighter space, it's more playful. And then it's so much easier to have a conversation with the person. So please go ahead and have a conversation with the person. Okay, Yukta has asked, can we please expand on this and unpack so many aspects related to adult issues, relationship patterns, attachment theory, subconscious habits, inner child? Oh boy, Yukta, I could spend like another 4 hours on this webinar just on those topics that you've spoken about. The thing is, abuse can be so subtle over a period of time, and the webinar today is simply to begin with what constitutes as abuse and how to start the healing process of it. With regards to the inner child part of it, it's really, really simple. If you've been abused as a child, and if you reacted a certain way to that abuse, that inner child remains frozen the way it was. That when you move to being an adult, that inner child is still within you. And the moment you're abused in your environment, that inner child reacts the exact same way. So, for example, if you were abused when you were a child and you went into something is wrong with me, I need to be fixed, okay, I'm a mess up. Then, as an adult, if you're abused in the same way or another way, you will exactly go back to that same feeling. Oh, there's something wrong with me, I need to be fixed. That inner child hasn't healed. So that inner child healing is absolutely urgent. Okay, because unless the inner child is healed, the child, parent, and adult integration doesn't happen. For those of you who are aware of transactional analysis, that's the very, very critical balance that one has to maintain as an adult. So, Yukta, I think you know enough about this to go down that road. Ajay from Bhopal has messaged, how come you are so different? Okay. Okay. I don't know. I don't know whether I am different and how different I am. I okay, that's a bit. It stumped me a bit. Sorry, but because I've not never been bothered to kind of get into it. It's not something that I actively seek to be. Oh, let me find ways to be different from others. Never. But if you feel so, then that's probably how I show up for you. Or maybe it's the choices that I make because I'm always aligned to my own truth. Um, I can't sleep if I'm not honest with myself. It's really, I've brought myself to that point. I don't know, and I'm damn stubborn about me being who I am. See if that answers your question. Okay, Ajay. Surendra has asked, what is true love? Oh boy, it's definitely not a Hallmark card. How do you mean it, Surendra? I mean, do you mean it like in a relationship? Because to me, honestly, true love is what animals have. When we're kind to them, the purity in love that babies have, that pretty much is the truest love. I'm not even sure we as adult humans are even capable of it fully. We have moments of it, of course we do, when we are deeply connected with people and we've suspended judgment, or when you have an intense love making session with somebody, you feel it. But it's not a question for this seminar, honestly, but I've tried to answer, I hope. And the last one is Vijeta from Delhi, has said, it's not love, it's duties. I'm not sure what you mean by this, Vijeta. Is it a question? Is it a comment, an observation? Not quite sure. Okay, so we have some stuff on chat. Don't apologize for speaking the truth. Please mute Malini. I did. Shilpa, I know you have a question. Just hang on a second. I'll get you on board. For this answer, please share this session on a social platform so that others who are feeling this is on a social platform, Malini. Those who have registered will get to see it. Somebody has messaged me privately. I called my abuser a coward and stopped all communication as I knew he was cheating on me. We live in different cities. and no contact since 2 weeks. He has all the symptoms of a malignant narcissist, and I had hell for 6 months. Good for you. Really good for you. He runs a charity organization, which is a shield for him. He thrives on self admiration. How to unmask the abuser so that people see him as it is. I also told him that I would expose him. Okay, honey, you need to be very, very clear and very careful that him being exposed to the world is not your problem. Okay, please don't take to shaming him and naming him in public. I always tell people that during a separation, do everything to maintain your dignity and your self-respect, because even though it might feel really good to your ego to, ruin him right now and let the world know and expose him, I know that energy feels like you could feed on it for the rest of your life. Trust me, in a few months you're not going to be able to live with that decision. Okay, because inherently, if you have the courage enough to leave right now, which means that you have a certain level of empathy. And if your man has been a narcissist, I wouldn't be surprised if you're an empath, because that combination almost always is one of the most toxic and the most attractive of relationships. um, don't get into it. You focus on healing, you focus on strengthening, and you focus on getting onto your own journey. Leave him be. There is a reason why they say karma's a bitch. I'll just leave it at that. It's not your problem. Just leave it to the others. All right, Yukta, I have to excuse myself. Lots of love to you too, Yukta. Okay, somebody has asked how to save ourselves from emotional attack from the abuse. I think you need to revisit my earlier webinar on vulnerability and creating boundaries. I think go through that. Your questions will be answered over there. Surendra, thank you so much. How to get the abuser to seek medical help? Good luck to you on that one. Like I said, I mean, you can't get your abuser to do anything. Anything that you can do is only for you. Okay. Shilpa, do you want to come on board and ask your question, sweetheart? Are you there?
Yes, can you hear me, Aditi?
Yes, sweetheart. Tell me.
So, Aditi, I have a question to ask. I recently got married.
Okay, your voice is very soft, and we're not able to hear you. If you're on a
Can you
headset,
hear
just
me
be
now?
closer to the mic.
Can you hear me now?
Little better.
Okay, I don't have a headset. Okay, I'll just type it out.
I want to hear your voice. Okay, she recently got married. I think you can see her question on the chat, guys. Malini, don't worry about it. Okay, my husband's friend. Okay, why is that? Why is he or she making the social gatherings difficult?
Can you hear me now, Aditi?
I could hear you even then. It's just that you were very soft, but go for it.
Yeah. So, I don't know, Aditi, but somewhere I feel her insecurities are louder than her kind words. And any social gathering we go to, she tells me things and which are not very hurtful, but in an indirect way, they kind of are intended to hurt me. The worst part is that we are also the same workout group, and I get to see her almost every day.
Okay.
How do I deal with this? I've not been able to give it back to her or tell her that I don't appreciate being spoken to like that. And
Okay,
somewhere I
so
expect my husband to stand up, but I don't want that to I want to stand up for myself.
Shilpa, I think you're strong enough to speak up. You don't need your man to protect you, especially with another woman.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, was she in love with your husband by any chance?
No, I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, you
Because
never know. You
yeah,
never know when someone is nursing jealousy.
yeah.
Okay, so I think the nice thing would be to take her aside and ask her, hey, I just wanted to ask you, do you have a problem with me? Like, do you not like me? And I'm okay with that.
Actually, Aditi, I did that. I confronted her and I told her something that I mean, she was very mean to me the first few days. And I actually confronted her and I thought we kind of resolved it.
Mm.
But I don't see, I mean, her energy speaks otherwise.
Okay, so then I would say if she's not very important for you, you can avoid her.
Yes.
I think that's the best. You see
Yeah.
her at a social gathering, smile, nod, move away.
Done.
Yeah. Or,
Thank
just do cheers with a glass of wine and say, here's to your health or whatever. Be kind, be nice, and
Yeah.
be genuine kind, not putting up a fake, knowing fully well that, oh, okay, this is an animal I don't want to interact with.
Yeah. Thank you, Aditi.
That's it. Okay. Welcome. Okay, guys. Are there any other questions? Radhya, thank you.
Yeah,
Most
I have.
welcome.
I have a
Yes, Ajay.
question.
Hi. Again, you'll have to speak up,
Hi.
my friend.
Yeah. See, I have a daughter of 14 years, and
14-year-old daughter.
yeah, and she's quite pretty. And my father, is constantly gaslighting my daughter, and means my father is trying that she should not go out of this house without his permission. And my daughter was actually inside the house for 3.5 months because of corona, and now she has to go out for meeting her friends or tuitions. But it's been a great topic since last around 1 week. My daughter has been in conversation with me. My sister from Mumbai is here with her, and my father has done this to my sister also around 20 years ago. So the same thing my father is repeating because he has a point of view कि मेरी पोती को कोई फंसा न ले या मेरी पोती
Okay,
should
Ajay,
not cross.
sorry, I know I would love to converse in Hindi, but there are also people here
Yeah.
from
So
country
he
who
has a
get it.
point of view that my daughter should not cross limits because he has seen the world from a very orthodox point of view.
Right.
Okay.
So what's your question, Ajay?
My question is, see, in a way, while you were speaking about all forms of abuse, I could also see that my daughter is also a very big abuser. My daughter has been abusing my wife. So
Okay.
I was acknowledging if my father is abusing her, it cannot happen unless she is also abusing other people in the family.
Okay. So
I just recognized during the conversation she's creating, because I have a son also of 11 years, but he's never abused because my son doesn't have that point of view of abusing anybody. He's like a person with no point of view. So I
okay,
was
Ajay,
just recognizing I should get into taking one person's side, my father or my daughter, or I should become neutral and let them sort them out on their
okay,
own.
let me tell you this very simply, because this is a very typical case of what I call third party interference in Indian families, especially in raising children. You need to set the mandate as the parent of the child that what you say will go, and that your father may have raised you a certain way and it was great for that time, but today's generation is very different and it's not going to work. And whatever that he needs to tell your daughter needs to come through you, that you are the filter, that you will be doing the vetting process for what's going to work for your daughter or not. That's what you will communicate to your dad. When it comes to communicating with your daughter, you will, even though she's 14, and teens are a whole different bunch, right? You have to assume that she's never going to listen. And if she does, well, congratulations, you've done a great job so far. Um, you're going to have to converse with her, ask her what is going on within her, highlight that this is how you have been behaving with your mom. This do you think that if we behaved like this with you, you would have liked it? So one of the ways in which you can always let a person know that they are being abusive is reflection or mirroring. Yeah, you don't do it, but you bring it to their notice. So for example, if she's cutting the mother off, or if she's stopping her mid sentence, or she's calling her a fool, or whatever it may be, you can tell her that if I said the same things to you, or if I did the same things to you, how would you feel? And she's going to be like, no, I don't like it, I don't want you to talk to me like that. Then that you tell her, this is how your mother feels, so do you think we can change this? Having a three-way conversation, you, the mother, and the daughter, and really opening it up and giving the person time to speak up. um, with your father, I don't think you need to involve everyone. You need to sit him down separately and you need to have a word with him, because we live in patriarchal families in India, the father being the head of the family, literally. They think that, you know, what they did at that time is still going to work right now. And a lot of conflicts arise because the previous generation and the next generation aren't seeing eye to eye. You've got to be the intermediate person in this. Uh, if you're going to be a peacekeeper in the house, the abuse is going to continue. If you want the abuse to stop, you're going to have to rock the boat, Ajay. And I think you understand that language
Yeah,
when we think about it. I have known you for a while, and I think
Mm.
you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I
Mm.
think that's the way to go. But I leave it to you how to do it, and I wish you the very best of luck with it.
Thank you, Aditya.
Welcome. Okay, guys, is there anyone else who has a question? No? All right. We've gone about 15 minutes, almost 15 minutes over. Okay. Someone has asked a question. My husband has been abusing me since the last 4 months. He needed me to cook food and keep the house clean after much quarrel. Okay, Radhya, what's the question, sweetheart? I don't have the question from you. He threw you out? Okay. Uh, okay. Okay. Now he's asked you to come back. Okay. Radhya, do you want to? Do you want to do this with him? Is my question. Let me put it this way. When I had to choose between staying, okay, so Aradhya, I don't know if you're aware of this, but about in 2017, I got divorced. And 2015 to 2017, I was in separation with my ex-husband. He cheated on me with another woman, and he was a bit narcissistic towards the end, although he's not a narcissist by nature. And I think about a year and a half after leaving me for another woman, he came back saying he wanted to come back. I didn't want him to be home, but he stayed forcefully for 6 months because the house was also his and mine. So he had a legal right. I made sure he slept on the couch. He never entered the bedroom. Um, I always made basic things available: food, water, mm, and my son. Okay. Now, the only difference is I always treated him as a human being, but I never treated him as a husband when he came back. And Aradhya, the reason why I'm sharing this with you is that um, I want you to listen to the story from a point of view that there is something else possible for you. Not that what I did was right or that's the only way. Okay. When he came back, he really tried for about 6 months to get me to take him back. The only question that I always asked in my mind is that me now, at this age, if I met this man for the first time, would I go for a man like him? Forget the fact that we've been married all these years. That's okay if you have a child. My son was 5 years old then, 5 or 6 years old. Doesn't matter. You don't have to listen to your parents. You don't have to listen to anyone but the voice in your head and in your heart. You do what you need to do for you. Because, even for me, I did it because I wanted to be a better mother. I would have been a miserable mother because I would have been a miserable wife. I would have not been happy with him. So when I thought about what kind of a relationship I wanted now, he's not somebody I wanted right now. And I told him this. I said, listen, I'm really sorry. I have loved you. I have respected you. I have trusted you. I don't have any of those three things for you right now. So how am I going to build any kind of life with you? I'm really trying hard to ignite it or feel it, but nothing is happening. It's dead. I really wish it was different, but I can't be dishonest with you. I can't lie to you. The fact is, I don't feel a damn thing, you know. So you're free to be with whoever you want, but please let me be free to be with whomever I want today. I don't have to be with you just because we had all this in the past and just because we have a daughter. We will be amazing co-parents, but I don't really see anything more than that. And I promise to be a great co-parent. We'll cooperate on everything as far as our daughter is concerned. We will always remain great parents, but we don't have to be husband and wife. Okay. Aradhya, at this point of time in your life, if you were to get married to a man, is this the man you would choose to get married to? Okay. You have to keep asking yourself that question because you've been given another opportunity. Because now, if you go back into this marriage, you have to either make it a whole new one or you have to simply walk away. You cannot let the previous patterns continue in this one again. And that's a choice you need to make. And I really hope that me sharing all of my stuff has helped you in any way. Malini, please share the link of your Facebook page. My Facebook page is Aditi Nirvan. That's ADITI Nirvan. You can just see that on Facebook. And YouTube is also the same. So yeah, I'm Aditi Nirvan everywhere. Okay. Okay, guys, I think it's about time that we wrapped up. Otherwise, this is something that can continue for the whole day. I do have other things, and I'm sure you do too. So thank you everybody for joining in for a difficult topic. And I genuinely hope I've been able to do anything for all of you. And from September 5th onwards, the topics are changing. It's no longer about relationships. Next month, we're going to have 4 different topics about how to create a life that you love and how to create a business that you love. So we are shifting gears and we are changing lanes. So I hope that you guys can join me. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Simply because we're going to come literally from the innermost part of you to the outermost part of you. The innermost being understanding, who you are, and how do you not procrastinate? How do you get systematically into building that kind of life that you love and that kind of life that you want to create? And it's one of the most exciting topics for me, and I really hope that you guys enjoy it too. And I will see you on the 5th of September for the next webinar that inspires, called Stop Procrastinating and Start Creating. All right, guys, have a wonderful week and lots of love to all of you. Bye.